yeah, that's the story of how I lost my job and how I became unemployed as a doctor. Hey guys, it's Mare. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how I got fired from my second job in my career. I'm an optometrist. I am an eye doctor, and I got fired from my second job at no fault of my own. Can say that there's some things that I would have handled differently had I had the insight that I had now. Just for timeline's sake, I joined on with a private equity company in August. I was employed by a corporate umbrella to go work in a specific clinic that they had bought from another physician. This physician sold their practice to them about 5 years ago and is now looking for an optometrist to help build a dry eye program and also see some of her plastic surgery patients, which is everything that I wanted to do and like a dream. Everything goes great up until I get my contract. I'm being offered not only less than what I'm currently making in my current position, but also significantly less than market value, with a promise that I'd make some of it back in production. So a lower base salary and a higher production bonus. I'm very wary of this because my production bonus in the contract that I was in was not being paid out. It was not being paid out because the company honestly was just shady. So they weren't paying me my bonus, and I didn't want to sign another contract that put most of my income into a bonus that I may or may not see. I was just like, you know what? In order for me to take this position, I need a higher base salary, and I need to make at least what I'm making now to leave my job for this job. The surgeon calls me and she's like, hey, I heard you don't want the offer. And I was like, it's not that I don't want the offer. It's not paying what I'm currently making now. So financially, it doesn't make sense to move on from this position. I was in the process of negotiating, but since you're calling me, I'm assuming that they didn't want to negotiate with me. So she's like, yeah, they just feel like they have to be fair to the other optometrists that took their deal, and they don't want to pay you more than that. I was just like, okay, that's understandable. Can't join under those conditions, and I appreciate the offer. She was able to pull some strings, and she was able to get me the base salary that I was currently making, plus still the production. Again, didn't care about the production because in my experience, contracts never paid out the production bonus anyway. I was like, all right, cool. Got my base salary that I'm currently making anyway, and I got a really good opportunity to go expand my scope, so I'm gonna take this. Beginning of October, I am told that the support staff is being furloughed. All of the support staff across the entire company is being furloughed. So we're all going to be affected. We're not going to have any support staff for X amount of hours during the week. Why is this? Financially, the company is not doing well. We cannot physically pay them for their hours. I negotiated for a month on my base salary. They wanted to underpay me, and it turns out it's probably because they just don't have the money to afford me or the employees that currently work for them. Then I go into work and I asked the surgeon, I was like, hey, did you hear about the furlough? She's like, yeah. And she just kind of goes back to what she's doing. And it's just kind of like she knows. And I was like, did you know? And she's like, yeah, they always do this. The conversation that I had with the surgeon beforehand was that we had so many patients booked out months in advance, and I needed you to join my team in order to help with that. And we don't have the money. And I'm adapting to this low support staff. Go to a doctor's office and you see the nurse, I don't have one. They can't hire me my own assistants unless I can see 20 patients a day. I can't see 20 patients a day without tech assistants. It's just a big mess that I got myself into that maybe a week after that, the surgeon's like, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of the way that they're running the business. I'm sick of the way that they're running the company. I think I'm going to pull out of it. I'm going to buy my practice back. I found out later that the company wanted her off the books. Like, that cost to operate is a lot higher than clinics that don't do plastic surgery. So they wanted us off the books. I find out later, but the way that it's phrased to me is that she's buying her practice back. Well, where does that leave me? She's like, well, do you like what you do here? I'm like, yeah, I love it here. I just started here. I'm starting to build this program. She's like, okay, well, then I'll bring you over. And so I ask, are you able to bring over my full contract? Because that's the only way. That's our initial negotiations were strained because of the initial pay. And that's the only way that I'm going to be able to join you is if you can pay me. She's like, yeah, like the contract, the pay, like don't worry about that. Like it'll be completely fine. I take her word for it. I'm like, okay. We get a termination letter from the other company, which wasn't weird. We're separating from them and it was to be expected, I was told. So I told the surgeon, I was like, hey, got my termination letter. I'm excited to talk about the new contract. She's like, yeah. Time goes on, silence. I don't hear anything. And we are now 30 days out from the new transition and the turnover and her owning her own business again. I need a contract in place with her business. I'm like, hey, haven't seen the new contract. She's like, yeah, just been super busy and all of these things. I'll get to it. Don't you worry. I'm going to pay you. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. So I am trying not to worry, although I am a worrier. Time goes on and I still don't hear anything. And I talk to her. I'm like, hey, just wanted to talk about the new contract. We're a few weeks out from the transition. And she's like, yeah, we just need to figure out what we're going to do. Figure out what we're going to do? What do you mean? She's like, we just need, like how to figure out not to go into debt for you and for your contract, because I got to pay all these other people. And I was like, yeah, that was one of my concerns that I brought up when you asked was, if you're going to be able to take on my full contract, and you said that it was no problem. Now, am I understanding that that's not something that you're able to do? And she's like, well, it's not that. We just need to figure out where the value is. So I'm excited to have this conversation. So we talk about the conversation and about what value I add to her practice. Mind you, she fought for me to join her practice. I wasn't going to take the offer. So I would think that you know what value I add to your practice. But we talked about it. I humored the conversation. Fine. So she's like, yeah. This all sounds great. We'll get you a new contract. I'll have them write it up. I'm going to contact the lawyer. Time goes on again, and we're like a week from the transition, a week from my contract expiring, and I don't have a new contract. I am being asked to build things like the EMR system and things like that for the new clinic. I don't have a contract for the new clinic in the transition. So I'm like, hey, just want to bring it on your radar again. Time's running out and I don't have a contract. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it is what I'm being told. At one point told the practice manager when she asked me to do something for the new practice, I was like, I'd love to do that for you, but I need to see my new contract. I am handed a health insurance form on a Wednesday, and I'm told I need this by the end of the day. You need to pick your benefits for the new clinic. I don't have a new contract for the new clinic. I like to talk about the contract so I can pick my benefits, because the benefits are highly dependent on the contract and how much I get paid and things like that. Surgeon calls me that night and she's like, I don't know what you're so worried about the contract for. We had a conversation. I thought we were fine. And I was like, we did have a conversation and we are fine. And none of those things have changed. The only thing that I'm asking for is to see a paper contract so I can sign it and so you can sign it and we can move on. And she's like, yeah, I understand that. And I was like, and also in addition, I can't be asked to fill out a health form in one day without going home to talk to my partner about it. So I'm going to go home and talk to my boyfriend about the health benefits, and I'd love to see a contract from you. She's like, yeah, no problem. I totally get that. I get where you're coming from. You need to know how you're getting paid and all of these things. We get off the phone on a common understanding. I get back to work the next day and it's like we never had the conversation. We just need to figure out what we're going to do. At this point, we are a few days out from the transition, and I have a very, direct conversation, and I just ask, are you able to fulfill my contract like you said? And she's finally honest with me, and she's like, you know what? I was looking at that number and I can't do that. I can't afford that. I have a business to run, and she gives me all these reasons, and I can respect that. I just would have liked to know that so I could have put myself in a different position in these last 30 days. And that was also on me. I should have did a backup plan regardless. I shouldn't have took her word for it. If I'm going to be somewhere full-time, I need a full-time pay or I need a different job. And so she's like, that is completely understandable. Why don't we work something out where you can be part-time here, maybe part-time somewhere else until I can get the money to pay you? And I'm like, okay. She's like, I'll bring you those numbers by Wednesday. Wednesday comes, she doesn't bring me any numbers. One day until the transition, until the clinic turns over. I don't have a contract. I don't have numbers. I don't have a job. I don't have anything. So at the end of it, the time ran out, the contract ended, and I was left unemployed. Day before everything was turned over, I texted her and I was like, I need to be able to put myself in a financial position that's secure, that has a secure foundation, that's something that's thought out, talked about, And then when we got back in office on my very last day, because everything just turned over and fell through so quick, she was like super sad. She's like, well, I wish you didn't have to leave. And I just am thinking to myself, like, I didn't. But you don't have a contract for me, and I'm not like here on volunteer time. So there's nothing else I can do without a contract. I didn't have anything as a backup because I thought I was going to have a new contract from her. I thought I was just going to stay in the same position, just under a different umbrella, under a different employer. That's how I lost my job.